Welcome to this pre-recorded version of the Food and Beverage Processing Project workshop presentation. This recording is designed to give those who cannot attend the face-to-face workshops, or those who would like a refresher, an opportunity to see what is presented during these sessions. My name is Danny McDonald and I'm an Industry Skills Standards Manager at Skills Impact. Before we begin, you may wish to download the workshop pack from the Skills Impact website. The link is in the description below. This pack includes a copy of this PowerPoint presentation we'll be using today and other handouts referred to throughout the session. Also on the website are copies of all of the draft documents that we will be discussing. Let's get started. For this session today, we have a few things to cover. Firstly, we'll go through the key goals for the workshops themselves, what you'll be getting out of them, and what hopefully you'll be able to help us with. We'll give you some background about Skills Impact, who we are and what we do. We'll give a brief background about training packages themselves. So we'll go through the development process and what training packages are. We'll also give a bit of information about how units of competency are coded and what specialisations are in qualifications. And this will all hopefully give you some background information that will help when you're looking at the draft documents that have been put together. We'll then go on to talking about the Food and Beverage Processing Project itself. We'll go through what's been reviewed and what steps have been taken so far to review the documents. We'll talk about what changes are being proposed, including changes to the qualifications, units of competency, and the skill sets themselves. Lastly, how you can get involved with providing feedback, some additional information about projects that are happening at the same time as this Food and Beverage Processing Project, and then what the next steps will be. So the key goals for today, firstly, it's to inform stakeholders of potential changes to training package products, that is qualifications and units of competency, that are related to the food and beverage processing sector. We're also here to gather feedback on the proposed changes that are being made to these training package products, and mostly to check that the training package products that have been put together are fit for purpose for both industry and training organisations. So a little bit about Skills Impact. Skills Impact is a not-for-profit, industry-owned skills standards organisation. We work with industry, training providers and government to benchmark skills standards, that is, to help define the standard at which a person needs to undertake a task to be deemed competent. This helps us to develop industry-led qualifications. We track industry trends, skills opportunities and challenges, and then use this information to publish skills forecasts to provide advice about future skills needs and solutions. Skills Impact specifically works with the following industries. We have agriculture, horticulture, conservation and land management, animal care and management, aquaculture and wild catch, food, beverage and pharmaceutical, which is where this project falls, forestry and timber, meat processing, pulp and paper manufacturing, and racing. So what is the role of a skills standards organisation? Well, firstly, we identify gaps and emerging skills needs. Gaps can be identified through feedback from industry, training organisations, or observed through industry trends. This information is captured in skills forecasts and cases for change, which are submitted to the Australian Industry and Skills Committee, often referred to as the AISC. The AISC then determines the national schedule of projects, and this is based on the information that has been provided in the skills forecasts and cases for change. From there, training package projects are formed, which is where we are now. We'll go through this process in a little bit more detail when we talk through training packages, but for now, we are in the process of reviewing qualifications, skill sets, and units of competency with stakeholders in our training package project process. Once this process is complete and the documents have been submitted to the AISC, they are then hopefully endorsed by the AISC, signed off by state and territory ministers, and then are available for delivery on the training.gov.au website for training organisations to put on their scope of registration. All of this work is done on behalf of the relevant Industry Reference Committee, or IRC. In the case of this particular project, our IRC is the Food, Beverage and Pharmaceutical Industry Reference Committee. You can find more information about IRCs on the Skills Impact website. The link will be provided in the description below. Industry-led qualifications are critical. They give access to training that is up to date with the most recent skills and knowledge. Jobs and work functions change, and qualifications need to reflect those changes. So in the food and beverage processing industry, that can sometimes refer to changes that are happening with the Food Standards Code, for example, or changes to the way that food processing takes place in facilities. And that's why we ask people who are working in industry or who are working in training people in the food and beverage industry to be involved in these projects and help check that the documents that are being put together are fit for purpose for that industry. Who better to inform the skill standards for a job role than those that are experienced in it? If you haven't worked with training packages before, don't worry, this section is for you. We're going to give you some information to help give some background into what training package components are and how they're developed. We'll also explain some parts of training packages to help inform proposed changes that have been made. So to start off, what are training packages? Training packages are a set of nationally endorsed skills standards, otherwise referred to as units of competency, and qualifications. And these are used to assess skills and knowledge that people need to perform effectively in the workplace. They state the competencies that need to be achieved, but they don't prescribe how an individual should be trained. That's where training organisations come in. Training packages are the key resources for registered training organisations, RTOs, in the development of structured nationally endorsed training. RTOs develop teaching strategies and assessment methods to meet the needs, abilities and circumstances of learners. So RTOs take the training package content and they look at the standards to which a person would need to be trained in a particular skill and develop training and assessment around that. We talked about it a little bit earlier in the role of skills standards organisations. The training package development process starts from a skills forecast or case for change. Once the AISC has submitted their national schedule of projects, a project plan is put together. During the project planning phase, stakeholders are engaged to gather information to get a greater understanding of the work that needs to be done on the qualifications and units of competency, and to look at what skills gaps exist within the system that could be addressed through this project. Once the project plan is finalised, that's when we start the development phase. So we'll work with subject matter experts to take a deep dive into the qualifications and units that are being reviewed to make sure that they're fit for purpose, identifying any skills gaps that need to be addressed within industry and any gaps that exist within the current versions of the documents. A lot of work is done in that phase, and then when it's complete, we'll put everything out for public consultation during our drafts available phase. This is an opportunity for anyone and everyone to have a look at the draft documents that have been put together, to check to make sure that they work for everybody, not just the people that we've already consulted with. We'll put these documents up on the Skills Impact website, usually for a period of about 4 weeks or so, and that's the opportunity for people to come in and provide their feedback. During this time, we'll also travel to cities around Australia to hold workshops like this one, to speak to people face to face, to let them know what changes are being proposed so far, and to hear their feedback directly. Once the drafts available phase is complete, we'll take all of the feedback that we've received and collate that, review it, discuss it with subject matter experts, and then update the documents again to put together what's called our validation draft. It's another opportunity for stakeholders to have a look at the documents and make sure that they are meeting everyone's needs. Once the validation phase is complete, we then move into finalisation, where we put together what's called a case for endorsement. This case for endorsement is essentially a report that argues the case for why these documents need to be approved and in the national system. Also during this phase, we will go through a proofreading, edit and equity, and quality assurance process. There is a 2-week period where state and territory training authorities will consider the documents, and then once everything is signed off, we submit it to the Australian Industry and Skills Committee for their endorsement and approval. Once everything is endorsed and signed off, the units, skill sets and qualifications are published on training.gov.au and are available for training delivery by RTOs. So a bit about what training packages are themselves. Units of competency define the requirements of a work activity or a job task. They describe a specific thing that a person would need to do within their job each day. For example, they may take and record basic measurements as part of a work activity for their job. A unit of competency exists within the system called Take and Record Basic Measurements. Qualifications are made up of units of competency, and they are there to reflect a job role. So, for example, a Certificate 3 in food processing can be used to give an outcome of a food processing operator. And then lastly, we have what's called skill sets. Skill sets are also made up of units of competency, but usually a much smaller cluster. And they're designed to meet a specialist industry need or a regulatory or licensing requirement. For example, we have manage allergens in food processing as a skill set that's been created as part of this project, and that's been created to meet a specialist industry need. The other thing with skill sets is that they can provide a pathway towards qualifications and also a pathway from qualifications. And as I mentioned at the front of this, units of competency are the building blocks for qualifications and skill sets. So to reiterate, units of competency describe a job task, a specific thing that somebody will do in their job each day. And qualifications reflect a job role, a collection of tasks that somebody would do in their day. This section talks about how Skills Impact allocates codes to units of competency. As part of this project, there have been changes to some sectors and the AQF alignment of some units of competency. So this slide should hopefully give some context for those changes. Let's look at this example code of FBP FSY 3002. The first three letters of FBP are used to identify the training package that hosts this unit of competency. In this case, it's FBP Food, Beverage and Pharmaceutical Training Package. The next three letters in the code, FSY, represent the sector identifier. In this case, FSY stands for Food Safety. The first number in this sequence is the AQF level indicator. This number is a reflection of the type and depth of skills and knowledge that are described in the unit. This identifier is loosely tied to the Australian Qualifications framework. So in this instance, the number 3 reflects the Certificate 3 level from the Australian Qualifications framework. And if you'd like more information about the Australian Qualifications framework, otherwise known as AQF, have a look at the link below in the description. The last three numbers in the code identify the sequence of the unit in the particular unit sector and the AQF level, and allows each unit to have a unique code. So in this instance, 002 reflects the second AQF level 3 unit in the food safety sector. A quick note that while units of competency are being reviewed in this project, they will be allocated temporary codes that include X's, as the final code won't be known until the materials are uploaded to training.gov.au. So for example, you may see a unit FBP FSY 4XX1. The X's are letting you know that this is a new unit of competency. However, the FSY sector identifier is still included, and the number 4 as the AQF level indicator is also still included. This approach applies to new units and units with significant changes that may require a code change as per the Standards for Training Packages policy. Another change that has been made during this project has been the inclusion of specialisations in qualifications. For those unfamiliar with specialisations, specialisations in qualifications reflect a group of units of competency that give a focus on a specific skill area. They are clearly identified in the packaging rules of a qualification. Graduates who choose to complete the qualification with a specialisation, or two, will receive a testimonial certifying their attainment of the qualification with the specialisation, as shown in the example below. You can see Certificate 3 in Food Processing for Quality Control, where quality control reflects the specialisation that this person has completed. Let's move on to the Food and Beverage Processing project. This project is reviewing the Certificates 1, 2 and 3 in Food Processing and Certificates 2 and 3 in Food Processing Sales and all of the units of competency within them. This review considers many key changes in the industry, from regulatory changes affecting food safety and manufacturing processes, to increased need for skills around food allergens and traceability. Some of these changes could include things like changes to the Food Safety Code, for example. As for what's being reviewed, as I mentioned, all of the 5 qualifications in food processing and food processing sales at the certificates 1, 2 and 3 level. And then we have 168 units of competency across a range of sector areas, including allergens, beverage production, cheese and dairy production, confectionery and chocolate, eggs, fruits, vegetables and nuts, fats and oils, flour and grains milling, pet food, stock feed, traceability, and a series of multi-sector units including things like equipment and maintenance, food safety, health safety, and packaging, all of the types of skills that apply to all sectors. Okay, so what has happened so far? Once the project plan was complete, we sent a survey out to registered training organisations that had any of the certificates 1, 2 and 3 food processing qualifications on their scope of registration. And we were asking questions like how the qualifications were being used, what they thought worked with the existing qualifications, and what improvements they would like to see within the qualifications. We also asked for a bit of information about how the qualifications were being used in which sectors, and this helped us determine our sector approach list. From there, we sourced subject matter experts for each of these sectors and held individual workshops with each of these SME working groups to discuss and review the relevant units of competency to identify any skills gaps in the training package or within their industry that could be addressed with units of competency. We then had a large combined SME workshop where all of the sectors came together, and in that we reviewed and considered the proposed changes to the certificates 1, 2 and 3 in food processing, particularly around changes to the core units of competency. Because of potential change within the industry, it was important to make sure that the core units of competency in the qualifications were still relevant and reflected current industry needs. Once these workshops were completed, components had been reviewed and the draft documents have been developed based on all of this input. This has informed the first draft, and that's what is now available for broad consultation and feedback. In terms of what's being proposed, firstly, 5 qualifications are proposed to be consolidated into 2, 1 proposed for deletion, and 2 qualifications merged into other qualifications, with specialisations also added to the Certificate 3 in food processing. 12 new units of competency have been created, including for non-alcoholic beverage production, dairy processing, allergens, traceability, and other general operational sectors. 2 new skill sets have been created, covering allergens and 1 for traceability. And a new sector has been created, oil for oil refining. All of the qualifications have been reviewed to check alignment with the Australian Qualifications Framework, and qualifications have been adjusted accordingly. The alignment of the qualifications in some instances was not quite right, and so there are some changes in that area. In addition, the AQF alignment of units of competency has been reviewed. This means that some units have had their codes changed to reflect their correct nominal AQF level. For example, the unit FBP GRA 2013, Blend and Dispatch Malt, has been reviewed and changed to FBP GRA 3 with a sequence number to be applied soon. This reflects the AQF alignment 3, which is more suitable for this unit of competency. Some units of competency have also been moved to a different sector. This has been done to better indicate the coverage of the unit. Again, you'll notice this change in the code of the unit of competency. So for example, the code for the unit Control Contaminants and Allergens in the Workplace has been updated from a code of FBP OPR 3001, where OPR indicates the operational sector, to FBP FSY 3XX1, again with FSY reflecting the more suitable food safety sector for that particular unit. In addition, all units have had their foundation skills clarified and the core skills for work statements removed. Performance evidence has been clarified, particularly around volume and frequency of tasks to be performed for assessment. Knowledge evidence has been refined with minor changes in most units, and the assessment conditions have been made more succinct with minor changes in most units as well. Let's take a closer look at the proposed changes to the qualifications. As we mentioned before, we're starting with 5 qualifications in certificates 1, 2 and 3 in food processing and food processing sales. The first change proposed is to actually delete the Certificate 1 in food processing and suggest that people use the FSK 10119 Certificate 1 in access to vocational pathways. We'll provide a little bit more information on that in just a moment. The second proposed change is to merge the Certificate 2 in food processing and food processing sales into a new Certificate 2 in food processing. And then the last change is to do the same thing with the Certificate 3 in food processing and food processing sales. And this time a specialisation has been added to the Certificate 3 in food sales. Starting with the Certificate 1 in food processing. This qualification covers basic functional knowledge and skills to undertake work always under direct supervision. It's proposed for deletion. This deletion is proposed due to lack of food processing specific content in the qualification itself, and also due to declining enrolments. It is suggested that the required skills could be covered by the Certificate 1 in access to vocational pathways from the Foundation Skills Training Package, with food processing specific electives chosen to give a food processing specific outcome. This information and suggested selection of electives would be included in the companion volume implementation guide that accompanies the training package. Feedback from subject matter experts suggests this proposed approach could be a good way to modernise delivery of the Certificate 1 qualification, giving learners more relevant skills, opening them up to better pathways to other qualifications and job roles. Have a look at the document in your pack for the proposed structure of Certificate 1 in access to vocational pathways that has been put together as an alternative to the Certificate 1 in food processing. So our key questions for this are: do you support the deletion of the Certificate 1 in food processing? Does the suggested selection of elective units proposed in the Certificate 1 in access to vocational pathways meet industry needs? Are the outcomes still fit for purpose? For the Certificate 2 in food processing, have a look at the Certificate 2 in food processing draft document. The changes that we're proposing for this include: the Certificate 2 in food processing sales has been merged into this qualification. The sales qualification had few enrolments, and the core units of competency were almost identical to that of the Certificate 2 in food processing. In the updated qualification, the packaging rules have been simplified so that requirements are clearer for users. Early feedback from trainers suggested that the packaging rules in this qualification were quite cumbersome, so these have now been simplified. The unit Participate in environmentally sustainable work practices has been removed from the core of the qualification, and the content that would be covered by this unit of competency has been clarified and embedded in all other relevant units of competency, both in the core of the qualification and in elective units. The unit Implement the Food Safety Program and Procedures unit has been brought into the core. This unit was previously one of two options in Group A in the original qualification, and based on stakeholder feedback, we've heard that this unit is relevant to all workers and so should be part of the core so that everybody gets these skills. The pool of elective units has been considerably reduced. This is part of efforts to simplify the qualification, but it's also the result of many units of competency that were previously listed having their AQF alignment adjusted to a new Certificate 3 level. Units from other training packages may still be selected as part of the packaging rules, so flexibility and elective choice is still there. So the key questions are the core units of competency in the proposed new qualification suitable for all sectors of food processing? Do the units of competency listed in the qualification accurately reflect the skills and knowledge required to perform specific tasks within a large food processing facility? In the qualification, are all of the units at the correct AQF level? Are there any job tasks missing from the qualification? And are the job outcomes of the proposed new qualification considered to be the same as those in the previous version of the qualification, FBP 20117? Moving on to the Certificate 3 in food processing, and you may wish to refer to the draft FBP 3X120 Certificate 3 in Food Processing document. The Certificate 3 in Food Processing is designed for an operational role. Users can work independently and have some basic problem-solving skills. So for the proposed changes, similar to the Certificate 2, the Certificate 3 in Food Processing Sales has been merged into this qualification, and a sales specialisation has been included to cover those skills. For the same reasons, the sales qualification at the Certificate 3 level had low enrolments in it, and the core units in both qualifications again were very similar. In the new Certificate 3 in Food Processing, specialisations have been added in brewing, confectionery, dairy processing for cheese, powder and or milk, non-alcoholic beverages such as fruit juice, cordial and non-fermented products, oil production, pet food, quality control, sales and stock feed. 2 new units of competency have been included in the core of the qualification to address current priority issues within food processing. They are control contaminants and allergens in the workplace and participate in traceability and recall activities. Packaging rules in the qualification have been simplified so that requirements are clearer for users. Participate in environmentally sustainable work practices has also been removed from the core of the Certificate 3 qualification, again with content clarified and embedded in all other units of competency, both in the core and in elective units. So the key questions again for the Certificate 3 in Food Processing changes. Are the core units in the qualification suitable for all sectors of food processing? Are the units included in the specialisations suitable for the named sector, and are there any additions? Are there other specialisations that could be added, and if so, what units would need to be included for that specialisation? Do the units of competency listed in the qualification accurately reflect the skills and knowledge required to perform specific tasks within a large food processing facility? Are all of the units in the qualification at their correct AQF level? Are there any job tasks missing from the qualification? And are the job outcomes of the proposed new qualification considered the same as those in the previous version of the qualification, FBP 30117? Moving on to the units of competency. As we mentioned before, there are quite a large number of units of competency included in this project. You can view all of the drafts of these units on the Skills Impact website. Again, the link is below in the description. For all of the units of competency that have been reviewed and created, the following questions apply. Are there potential problems that may arise through the processes described in the units of competency that could be used in the performance evidence section? To help strengthen the problem-solving aspects in units of competency, and particularly for this performance evidence section, we would like to be able to include some specific potential problems that can arise in the processes that are covered by the unit. So for example, in confectionery, a common problem that could be solved involves blocked nozzles. What would a learner need to do to solve this problem? Back to the units. Do the units of competency accurately reflect the skills and knowledge required to perform specific tasks within a large food processing facility? Do these units work in all large types of food processing facilities? Is the correct language and terminology being used in these units of competency? This is very important to us to make sure that the units are fit for purpose for industry. So if we're not using the correct terminology, please let us know. Are the steps described in the units accurate, and are they in a logical order? Are they being done in the order that would take place in a workplace? Is the assessment reasonable? Again, this is in the performance evidence section of the unit of competency. Have a look in there and see how many times somebody is being asked to perform a particular task. Are they being asked to do an excessive amount of work or a task over an excessive period of time? Again, please let us know. And lastly, are all units at the correct AQF level? Again, there's a lot of units to go through as part of this project, so please feel free to jump to the sector that is relevant to you. Lastly, skill sets. As we mentioned before, skill sets are a small cluster of units of competency that are used to address a specific industry need or regulatory or licensing requirement. We've created 2 new skill sets so far for this project. The first one being manage allergens in food processing and check traceability of food products. And again, these are to address a specific industry need. So the key questions that we have for these skill sets are the units of competency listed in the skill sets suitable for the sector requirement? Are there any gaps in current training and assessment of food processing that could be covered by skill sets? Or are there other specialist requirements in food processing that could be covered by skill sets? We have scope to create new skill sets, so if you feel there is a need for one, please get in touch. So that covers the project and the changes that are proposed so far in this first public consultation draft. We now ask you to help us by providing your feedback and letting us know whether these proposed changes work for you and your industry. Feedback on these draft documents closes on the 27th of March 2020. There are a few ways that you can provide feedback to us. The first way is through the Skills Impact Feedback Hub. The Feedback Hub allows you to comment directly on the draft documents and is very easy to use. You can access the draft documents on the Food and Beverage Processing Project webpage with the link provided in the description below. Follow the prompts on the website and include your feedback directly on the draft documents. Alternatively, you can email myself, Danny McDonald, at dmcdonald@skillsimpact.com.au. We are holding workshops during February and March to discuss the draft documents, and you are more than welcome to attend one of these sessions. Just visit the Skills Impact website for more information. Before you go, we just wanted to let you know about another project that is happening at the same time as the Food and Beverage Processing Project. And this is a project to replace FDF units in FBP qualifications. Many of the units of competency for the food and beverage industry have been updated during projects over the past few years. As part of these updates, the units of competency received new codes. These are now FBP, where previously they were FDF. Several qualifications that haven't been included as part of these projects still include units with the code of FDF on them. As part of this project, the FDF units that have already been reviewed that have new FBP codes will be replaced by equivalent FBP units in qualifications which were not updated in the past 2 years. These updated qualifications will be released at the same time as qualifications and units from the Food and Beverage Processing Project. If this change impacts you, we strongly recommend that you visit the Skills Impact website for detailed information about the qualifications that are affected, what changes are expected, and what feedback you can provide on the changes. We have a mapping document on the site which shows specifically which units of competency will be replaced and by what. That about wraps it up. For what's next, all feedback that has been received during this consultation period will be collated and reviewed, and any updates will be discussed with subject matter experts, and changes made to the qualifications, units, and skill sets as needed to form the next draft. Feedback, comments, and suggestions are welcome at any time, so please get in touch. Our contact details are at the bottom of this slide. We strongly suggest, if you haven't already, to please sign up to the Skills Impact newsletter. You can do this by visiting skillsimpact.com.au, clicking the subscribe button in the top banner of the website, and filling in your details. Thank you for watching this session. We look forward to receiving your feedback soon. Thank you.